In the grand halls of Spanish history, few figures once shone as brightly as King Juan Carlos I. He was the man who helped steer Spain from dictatorship to democracy, the monarch who stood firm against a coup, the symbol of a modernized, open, and democratic nation. But behind the royal facade, behind the medals, the speeches, and the official portraits, lurked a shadowy story of passion, betrayal, and money that stretched across continents. Today, we peel back the curtain on a life that spiraled from admiration to scandal, a story of mistresses' secret bank accounts, and the fall of a king. Juan Carlos Alfonso Victor Maria de Borbón y Borbón was born in Rome in 1938, into exile. Spain was then under the iron grip of Francisco Franco, and the monarchy had been swept aside. Juan Carlos grew up between the shadow of fascism and the hope of restoration. In 1969, Franco himself named Juan Carlos as his official successor, betting on a pliable figure who would preserve his authoritarian legacy. Yet history took a surprising turn. When Franco died in 1975, Juan Carlos ascended the throne, and instead of continuing dictatorship, he ushered in democracy. He legalized political parties, guided the drafting of a new constitution, and, in 1981, he famously stood against a military coup, ordering rebellious soldiers to stand down. In that moment, Juan Carlos became a hero. Polls showed overwhelming public approval. For decades, Spaniards saw him as the monarch who had rescued their democracy. But what the public didn't know, or perhaps didn't want to say, was the double life the king was leading behind the crown. Juan Carlos had married Princess Sofia of Greece in 1962. Together, they had 3 children, Elena, Cristina, and Felipe. The current king, but as Sofia played the dutiful queen, raising the heirs and performing royal duties, Juan Carlos's eye wandered. And it didn't wander just once. From the earliest years of his reign, whispers of royal infidelity echoed through Madrid's corridors of power. Spanish society at the time operated under a culture of silence. The press, bound by deference and censorship traditions, rarely reported on the king's personal life. Yet, insiders knew. Juan Carlos was rumored to have taken dozens, even hundreds, of lovers. Names surfaced, disappeared, and reappeared in gossip circles. Actresses, aristocrats, and socialites were whispered about. Some accounts suggest that Juan Carlos may have had over 1,500 mistresses during his reign. Whether that number is fact or exaggeration, the image of a monarch constantly chasing women clashed dramatically with the public image of stability and duty. One of the earliest public cracks appeared in the 1990s, when tabloids hinted at affairs, but it wasn't until the 2000s and 2010s that the veil truly lifted, and the most dramatic reveal came not through whispered rumors, but through the story of one woman, Corina Larsen. Corina, a Danish German, businesswoman, and socialite, entered Juan Carlos's life in the early 2000s. Elegant, well-connected, and fiercely independent, she became the king's close companion, not just privately, but also in his business and diplomatic dealings. The relationship was an open secret. She traveled with him, appeared alongside him on hunts and safaris, and was introduced to foreign dignitaries. But in 2012, the royal affair exploded into scandal during what should have been a quiet, private trip. Spain was in the middle of a severe economic crisis. Unemployment was soaring, austerity measures were biting, and ordinary Spaniards were struggling to survive. Yet, in April 2012, Juan Carlos secretly flew to Botswana for an extravagant elephant-hunting safari accompanied not by Queen Sofia, but by Corina. The trip might have stayed hidden, if not for an accident. Juan Carlos fell and broke his hip. Suddenly, the news splashed across Spanish headlines. While his people suffered, the king had been hunting elephants abroad with his mistress. Public outrage erupted. Protesters held signs saying, "Why don't you resign?" For the first time, the king's approval ratings plummeted. The image of the savior of democracy was shattered, replaced by the image of a reckless monarch who had lost touch with his people. But the safari was only the beginning. Behind Corina Larsen's glamorous presence lurked deeper secrets. Vast sums of money flowing through hidden channels, secret accounts in Switzerland, and financial gifts that stretched credibility. The most explosive revelation came from a leaked financial transfer. In 2008, the King of Saudi Arabia, Abdullah bin Abdulaziz, transferred a staggering $100 million into a Swiss bank account linked to Juan Carlos. Officially, it was described as a gift. But investigators later questioned, was it a gift, or was it a payoff connected to billion-dollar contracts involving Spanish companies in Saudi Arabia? The account was managed in the name of the Lucum Foundation, a Panama-registered entity with a Swiss bank account. And from this account, millions flowed. Some of that money reportedly ended up linked to Corina Larsen. She herself later admitted in interviews that she received financial transfers from Juan Carlos funds she described as donations to help her and her family. When Spanish and Swiss prosecutors dug deeper, they discovered a web of offshore structures, intermediaries, and undeclared assets. The king, who had sworn to serve his people, was hiding millions abroad. Media outlets like El País, The Guardian, and Swiss newspapers published investigations, revealing how prosecutors uncovered evidence of money laundering and tax evasion. In 2020, Swiss prosecutors even launched formal proceedings, though Juan Carlos denied wrongdoing. Facing mounting pressure, he fled Spain in August 2020, choosing exile in Abu Dhabi. The scandal was seismic. For decades, Juan Carlos had been untouchable, shielded by reverence and the myth of his role in Spain's democracy. Now, he was branded as corrupt and reckless. Polls revealed that a majority of Spaniards believed he had damaged the monarchy. Support for the crown, once strong, weakened dramatically. Yet, the financial scandals were only part of the downfall. The mistresses, particularly Corina Larsen, remained central to the narrative. In taped conversations leaked to the media, Corina alleged that Juan Carlos had used her as a front for his financial dealings, placing money and properties in her name to hide them from scrutiny. She described harassment and intimidation from Spanish intelligence services, claiming that her life had been made a living nightmare after the relationship soured. The tapes shook Spain. For the first time, a mistress wasn't just a private embarrassment. She was a whistleblower implicating a former king in international corruption. Meanwhile, Queen Sofia remained a stoic figure. For decades, she endured rumors, scandals, and humiliation. Her image contrasted sharply with Juan Carlos's. While she represented dignity, sacrifice, and quiet service, he embodied indulgence, betrayal, and secrecy. By the time of his abdication in 2014, the marriage was largely ceremonial. The king and queen lived separate lives, meeting only for official appearances. The abdication itself was framed as a gesture of renewal. Officially, Juan Carlos cited his age and health. Unofficially, everyone knew the scandals had made his position untenable. He passed the crown to his son, Philippe VI, who has since spent years trying to restore trust in the monarchy. Philippe renounced his father, Issei Niditans cut off his financial ties, and emphasized transparency. Yet the shadow of Juan Carlos loomed. In exile, the former king has lived a quieter but still controversial life. Reports surfaced of luxury accommodations in Abu Dhabi, discreet visits back to Spain, and ongoing investigations. Although some charges were dropped due to statutes of limitations or immunity, the stains remain. The saga of Juan Carlos is more than just gossip about affairs and money. It is a cautionary tale about power, secrecy, and betrayal. How could a man who gave Spain democracy betray his own people with greed? How could a king who stood against a coup fall to whispers of mistresses and secret bank accounts? The answer lies in the contradiction at the heart of Juan Carlos's reign. The public hero and the private opportunist, the democratic symbol and the man consumed by excess. In the end, history will remember both sides. The man who helped Spain escape dictatorship, and the man who brought shame to the crown through mistresses' money and betrayal. His story reminds us that even kings are not above temptation, and that the walls of palaces cannot hide the truth forever.